Yeah, I guess friend's friend, Susan Harris, didn't mistake what you answered. She's nice to you, so I misstated that. But God knows, just to clarify so you know. So we are moving from the primeval age in Genesis chapters 1 through 11, which are core to understanding, especially Genesis 1 through 3, core to understanding all the scriptures. It's critical that there's a good understanding, a baseline of Genesis chapter 1 through 3 as a foundation for all of the scriptures through Revelation, as well as especially chapters 4 through 11. 1 through 11 is the primeval period, and 4 through 11 especially, very important to the Israelites to understand their heritage and where they come from. And a lot of this leads up into we are now into the patriarchal age, the ancestry of the Israelites, as well as Abraham, of course, is both the Jews, the Israelites, the Arabs, and as well as the Christians, all look to Abraham as their heritage, as their father. So we want to spend today and next week looking at Abraham. The following week we'll look at Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. So we won't go verse by verse. Matter of fact, we wouldn't go chapter by chapter per se. We're going to focus on some key events and characteristics of Abraham today. And then next week we'll look at the covenantal blessings or the covenants of Abraham. And so that's sort of our plan and vision. Abraham's life, as we're told of his life beginning in chapter 11, where he was left with his father Terah, and they leave the city of Ur in the lower Mesopotamia and travel up to Haran in the upper Mesopotamian area. We're told a little bit about his past and his father Terah, who had died in Haran. And then we're told that God called Abram at this time, in Genesis chapter 12. He calls him, and we'll just spend some time looking at that. But just as a quick overview, in Genesis chapter 12, he calls Abram to leave, and Abram takes with him some of his family, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot. Apparently, some of the family remained behind because he later sends for a wife for Isaac back to Haran to his family, as well as Jacob returns to the family in Haran in order to get his wife, and he ends up with two of them. So chapter 13, of course, Abram and Lot had been very successful, and both had grown considerably in their wealth and their shepherd their herds, and ultimately they separate in chapter 13. Chapter 14, following Lot's life, there's some city-state kings that are in battle, and one of them takes for the spoils of the battle in Sodom. They take Lot and his family as part of the spoils, and of course we see that Abram goes and rescues him with his 318 soldiers, along with two other city kings, and he returns back as a victor, and of course this is when Melchizedek comes in. He blesses Abram, and Abram actually blesses him, but not the other way around. And then in chapter 15 is the promise reiterated, from chapter 12 of a promised son and a land. And of course in this chapter 15 that promise turns into a covenant, which we'll look at next week. In chapter 16 is the Sarai, who's been waiting now about 10 years for this promise to be fulfilled, and is tired of waiting, and so offers Hagar, her handmaiden, which is, we'll talk about in a little bit, follows the tradition or the norm of a woman who's not able to father or to have a child, to offer another in their stead to give birth. And so this, of course, leads into their plan, not God's. And then chapter 17 is the circumcision, covenant circumcision of Abraham and his family, including Ishmael. And in chapter 18, the promise is reiterated of the birth of Isaac. Chapter 19 is the doom of Sodom, where Lot is living. The neat thing about chapter 18 and 19 is there Abram is contrasted with Lot. Lot comes to the city and sort of assimilates into the world, where Abram is contrasted, where he is keeps himself pure or separate from the ways of the world, where Lot seems to take in the world's ways in chapter 19, and as well as in 19. All right, and then of course in chapter 20 is when Abraham goes to King Abimelech, and once again for the second time lies about his wife Sarah. In chapter 22 or 21, Isaac is finally born. Anybody know how many years it took for Isaac to be born when the promise was first made? How old was Abram when he left Haran? The promise was made to him. Anybody know? 75 years old. How old was Abram when he had Isaac? 100 years old. How many years is that? Let's do the math. That's a long time to wait for a promise. This is part of our lesson today. So in chapter 22, 21, Isaac is born. 22 is the offering to God with the promised son, Isaac, and we'll spend time a little bit next week looking at that. That ties into the covenant blessing, or the covenant, Abraham's covenant. And then 23 is the death of Sarah. And then there's 24, sort of an interlude. It's a bride for Isaac, and 25 is Abraham's death. So very quickly, we're going to cover chapters 12 through 25, at least at the top level, and we'll point out specifically a couple things from dealing with Abram's character and the things that he had to deal with and how that relates to our life. So in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in all the families of the earth you will be blessed." In verse 4, "So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran." Verse 5, "Abram took Sarai with his wife, and Lot his nephew, and all the possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran." Apparently they had lots of servants. "And they went out, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan." And in verse 6, "Abram passed through the land beside Shechem, and the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was within in the land." In the beginning, God tells Abram to go. Doesn't give us any explanation, any insight to why did God pick Abram? Why not somebody else? What's special about Abram? There's absolutely no insight provided. We can speculate all we want, but the Lord has not told us why Abram. Now we see Abram follows God and walks with God and is righteous in the sight of God. But the initial calling of him doesn't give us any explanation as to why. I would suspect, and that's what it is, speculation, I would suspect that God obviously, this is not speculation, God obviously saw something in Abram that he didn't see in others. I would suspect that Abram might have looked upon the world and saw the majesty of God, as we can do. And so he saw something in Abram that led him to call Abram forth. The calling is very specific, and we'll talk more about this next week, because it is through Abram and his family, his descendants, in which all blessings come to all nations. God blesses all of us through one family as a direct result. But there's no indication of why Abram. There's no indication, in fact, when he tells what led Abram to obey. I mean, why is it that Abram said, maybe he heard a voice in his head, maybe it was an audible voice, maybe it was a dream. There's no indication how God gave that command, but we have no indication why Abram obeyed. But the fact that he did obey is what's important. And Abram, in his obedience, has to leave a family of idolaters. Somebody read Joshua chapter 24, verse 2 and verse 15. 24, verse 2. Joshua chapter 24, verse 2 and verse 15.
English Standard Translation. And Joshua said to all the people, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, long ago your fathers lived beyond the Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and of Nahor, and they served other gods."
Verse 15.
15 reads, "And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord."
Thank you, Vern. It's significant that Abram and his family came from the city of Ur and went to the city of Haran. Both cities were well known for worshiping the moon god. And even the name of Sarai and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, his niece, both represents in the Akkadian language a reference back to the sun god, or the moon god, excuse me. And Joshua specifically tells us that their fathers, back to Terah, were idolaters. It's important that Abram leave this idolatrous family and this idolatrous community. Why would it matter that he leave? Why couldn't he just stay there in the promised land? Anybody have any idea? God could have said, "Stay here and I promise you descendants and land, but I'll let you know when later." No, he told him to leave. Why? Okay, very good. More than just harder. The fact that if we live in a world, a society where church and state are separated, that's not the case in all parts of the world, and certainly not the case there. To not join in the festivals, the annual festivals associated with the moon god, would be seen as, what's the right word? Be seen as blasphemous with regard to the moon god. So something didn't happen, something didn't go right, maybe they didn't get the rains or whatever the case may be. Who's to blame? Abram. And so his staying would put his life in jeopardy. God told him to go away to an area where there are not these city-states that are controlling the one particular pagan god. And so Abram obeys and leaves, and he travels to the land. It's interesting, he travels to a land he's not even told where to go, but he goes anyway. I remember the song, anybody know the song Harry Chapin sings called "Cats in the Cradle"? Father's too busy to spend time with his son, offers unfulfilled promises to spend time with him, watches the son grow up into a man who's focused on his career and personal pursuits. The very last sad line of the song, "As I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up to be just like me. My boy was just like me." We inherit cultural biases, traditions, beliefs, family morals, religious beliefs from our family. But yet we're accountable to God as individuals. For Abram to remain within this community, as Joshua pointed out, it would be significantly harder for him to remain faithful, to understand, see, and follow the one true living God. And some other thoughts, but I'm going to skip those for now. Abram, as in James 2, verse 23 says, was an obedient friend of God. He rejected the religious ways of his family, abandoning their sinful ways. And so he left, and so that he could worship in obedience to God. I've got to watch my time because I got several slides. In leaving, Abram had to overcome not just his family traditions, he had to overcome fear. I don't know that we really appreciate what it must have been like for him to leave. It says in chapter 12, verse 1, the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your country," number one, from your country. Number two, from your relatives. And number three, from their father's house 3 times. Tells them what he's leaving. He's leaving his region, his country, his home. Like God tells you, get out of the United States. Go somewhere else. I'll tell you where later. Go to Iraq or Iran, or Pakistan, wherever. Get out. He's leaving a region of relative safety for those who live there, anyway, because there's a community, numbers bring safety, right? So now he's going alone, semi-alone with his family, a small set of his family. He's going, and in leaving, there had to be some degree of fear for what's unknown. God didn't say, go here. He said, go. I will show you where. Now, Christopher Columbus set sail, what's the 1682, 92? 1692, however that one goes. He sailed across the ocean blue. People were afraid they were going to fall off the face of the earth. The unknown is fearful to you and I as well. To go somewhere or to do something that's new, that's unknown, can create some anxiety and some fear. It would seem that Abram might have felt the same thing. It's not natural for a son to leave the family, to leave his homeland. Now understand that his father died terribly, and the son, Abram, is now the leader of the family, because he's the oldest. His oldest son is Abram, and he's the leader of the family, and so the leader to leave, leaving behind the rest of the family, was a major, big deal. He's leaving the safety of the security of the family. Families stayed together in these societies, which were based on family connections. They grew together. Large families were considered wealthy. Why? Well, large families, each member contributed to the wealth of the family. It was all one income, one family. And to lead impacts all the family. Abram doesn't dishonor his family, but gives a higher allegiance to God. And he even sends his servants back to find a wife for his son Isaac. So he still recognizes and honors the family, but a higher allegiance is given to God. Matthew 10, verse 37, he who loves the father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And so we see Abram living out, in a sort of, I don't want to say prophetic way, but living out what Jesus says in Matthew 10, verse 37. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And so he takes his family and leaves. He goes to a land I will show you. All is placed in God's hand. He turns the way. He shows the way. Revelation chapter 1, verse 17 and 18 says, he places his right hand on me, saying, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, the living one, and I was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. I have the keys to death and Hades. Abram, leaving a known situation, going to an unknown situation, and dependence upon God. I think there probably was some fear. We can see in Scripture there are times when he did things on his own, without we're talking about that in a moment, without God's direction. And I think oftentimes in our lives, we come to points in our lives where we often will do things without God's guidance. And we end up struggling as a result. Sometimes those struggles lead us to a stronger faith. And sometimes they turn us away. And some fall away. Abram remained obedient. And we're taught that even though we have fear in front of us, we don't need to be afraid because God is with us. Abram not only had to overcome traditions that were in his life, as we do. Who doesn't have a family tradition that goes back some generations? I didn't grow up in the church, and my family tradition was one that was not the best, some good and bad, like most all our families. I take with me what I learned in my family, and I have to work to unlearn the bad and learn new good to replace the bad. And overcoming fear, and as we step forward in our walk with Christ, overcoming fear as we move forward in the plans of this congregation and in the next few years, we have to turn to God uncertainty as Abram did. We already mentioned Abram was 75 years old when the promise was made to him to become a great nation. The promise was made to him to become a great name. And to his descendants was a promised land. You know, you can't become a great nation without land. You can't become a great nation without people. And all that is through Abram, through his promised son, Isaac. And so this promise was made to him. He's 75 years old. Sarai was how old when the promise was made? What's the difference between Sarai and Abram's age? 10 years, right? So if Abram was 75 when the promise was made, how old was Sarai? 65. They had no children, and women who could not have children at that time was viewed as something lesser of value, especially those who couldn't have sons. Even ancient marriage contracts allowed for a second wife if the first could not produce children. And so we see that with Sarai and Hagar when he gives her handmaid to him. Abram's called to leave his past and put his future in trust in God. And the text says, so Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him. Chapter 12, verse 4. This was his first step of obedience. He did what God said, even though life in the future was uncertain. God made a promise to him, he accepted the promise, and he went forward in obedience to that. Noah did the same thing in chapter 6 and verse 22. It says, thus Noah did all that the Lord had commanded. Moses did the same thing in Exodus chapter 39, verse 43. Just as the Lord commanded this, they had done. I think there's a lesson there's a lesson for all of us in that we see these great leaders in obedience and in faith stepping out and doing all that God commanded. Not parts, not this one part and choosing another, but all that God commanded. This they did. We too are given God's direction and guidance in life through the New Testament. And the question is for our life is, are we doing all that God had commanded? Versus, I like this part and not this part, so I don't even read this part. I just read over and go to the next part because that doesn't agree with my life. Many people want to ignore parts of Scripture because it doesn't truly agree with their life. And so it's easy to read past it. We have to be careful we don't do the same thing. Abram, Noah, Moses, all were rewarded because they did all that God commanded. Abram had to overcome uncertainty. He was promised land, promised a seed, which would be children, and a blessing. And as we mentioned, Abram was 90 years old when the promise was received. Well, Sarah was 90 and Abraham was 100 years. That's 25 years of waiting. 25 years of waiting for the promise. And of course, these uncertainties lead to questions, maybe doubts. How long are you waiting? Are we still waiting? As a Christian, we're still waiting for that eternal hope of promise. For Christ to come again, the second advent, that we can be with him for all eternity. In the interim, God has given us the church so that we can be together as his people so that we can be with Christ. But we still struggle in this world. 25 years is a long time. I don't know how, none of us know. Even Christ didn't know while he was on this earth that when God would end this age, the Christian age, for eternal life with him, for eternal separation from him. But for Abram and for Sarai, 25 years is a long time, don't you think? That's a considerable amount of uncertainty. Life is filled with uncertainties. But if we're following God's will, all things are possible. One of the things I want to point out and get to, actually, I want to bring it out here. Abram faced several challenges in his faith. We have the VBS view of Abraham. He was faithful to Hebrews 11, verse 7, I believe it is, the following. He was a faithful servant of God. But what are are some of the challenges Abraham faced in his faith with God? Can you name a few? Think for a moment about Abraham's life. What challenges did he face in his walk with God? Are there missteps that he made? Can you think of a misstep or two? You what?
He told the king that Sarah was his sister.
He told King Abimelech that Sarah was his sister. That's a misstep. What else? Did the same to the Pharaoh. Right? Twice he made the same misstep. What else? Sorry? Having a child by Hagar is a pretty big misstep, you know? Although, I don't say we can understand, but it's 10 years they waited for this promise. Matter of fact, you can see Abraham's frustration. I think it's in chapter 15. Chapter 15. Again, the promised son is discussed. After these things, verse 1, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not fear, Abram. I am a shield to you. Your reward will be very great." That sounds good. Verse 2, Abram said, "O Lord God, what will you give me, since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus?" And Abram said, "Since you have given no offspring to me, one born of my house is my heir." He's a little bit, not sarcastic is not the right word, but unhappy. He's not pleased. You promised me. Now, it's not quite 10 years yet, because it's later that we see the very next chapter that Sarah would take on. So, I don't know if it's 9 years or just turned to 10 or whatever, but sometimes it's passed. He's not happy. And he challenges God. What do you mean not going to reward me greatly? You haven't given me the rewards you promised already. What rewards are you talking about now? His faith was challenged several ways. His faith was challenged when he was told his descendants would be given that promised land. But what happened when he got to the promised land? Turn to chapter 12, verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. He gets to the promised land, and there's a famine. It's not a good sign. What's so great about this land? Matter of fact, the land of Canaan was often subject to famine. It's interesting that Abraham's life here mirrors the Israelites, or Israel, Jacob, and when there's another family in the land later on, and where do they go? Egypt. Well, Egypt was not as subject to the same degree of famine. They did occasionally, but not to the same degree, because they had the Nile River. The Nile River would overflow, and the marshlands would water the ground, when the Nile subsided, they would have a bumper crop. And so people could go to Egypt to escape the famine. Also in Egypt, chapter 12, verse 15. So he goes to Egypt. Pharaoh's officials, verse 15, Pharaoh's officials saw her, Sarai, and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Well, it's interesting that Abram was not directed to go to Egypt. He said, God said, "Trust me. I will take care of you." And so when the first trial comes, a difficult time, did he trust God, or do what he thought needed to be done? His own decision, he goes to Egypt. He gets there, and his beautiful wife, which he had assumed might be in jeopardy. So he said, when someone says, "Who are you?" Tell them, "You're my sister," which was a half-truth, but still a full lie. He was expecting, more than likely, it would seem, he was expecting that he would be able to negotiate. It was a brother would be the one to negotiate, in absence of the father, would be the one to negotiate the marriage of a sister. And that could take some time. So it seems that he might have been assuming he could negotiate, extend the negotiations out long enough until the family was in and they could return by going to Egypt, by putting Sarah as his sister instead of his wife. He does that, one, to protect his own life, is what he says. And two, he puts in jeopardy the promise. What happens if Sarai is taken into Pharaoh's harem and becomes intimate with Pharaoh? The promise is in jeopardy. He didn't depend upon God, he depended upon himself, and puts the promise in jeopardy. God rescues him, and all ends well. Also, there was strife in chapter 13, verse 11, strife between strife between Abram and Lot's herdsmen, and so Lot and Abraham separated. And Lot was taken captive in chapter 14. And then these are areas where his faith would be challenged. These were adversities which would make it difficult because Lot, in one sense, as part of his family, would be his heir. But once they separated, he would no longer be the heir. If Abraham had no children, Lot, as his nephew, would become the heir. But once they separated, then comes his servant in the household, Eleazar of Damascus, to be the heir. And so once again, Abram puts the promise in jeopardy. Chapter 15, Abram is promised a son which did not come immediately. That had to be, as we read, challenging to him. Abram's promised land, which also did not come immediately. And Abram was told to offer a son in sacrifice. The promised son in chapter 22, verse 2. Look at verse 2 of chapter 22. 22, verse 1, we'll start. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Now take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac. Go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. That had to be a challenge. The promised son. God said, here's your lineage, here's your great nation, here's the land, all through the promised son, all through Abraham and through Isaac. And now go offer him as a burnt sacrifice. Wholly consumed. Abram obediently went and did. There were several challenges to Abraham's faith. We have several challenges every single day to our faith. But like Abraham, he grew in his faith. It wasn't an immediate, full assurance or full dependence upon God. He obeyed God initially, but he would wane in his faith and do what he thought was right in his own eyes. But as a result, he would learn and he would grow in his faith. So it reaches the pinnacle in chapter 22. God tested Abraham, and God saw the obedience, the faith in Abraham. It's not so much that God saw, but Abraham, and as well as I think part of the sacrifice for Isaac was really a lot for Isaac. It was for Abraham or God, certainly not for God. Isaac was not a young man. In one sense he was, but he wasn't 12. He wasn't someone that Abraham could just wrap his arms around and control. He was more likely in his late teens, early 20s, maybe even his late 20s. Son that had his own will. You know, if I take my son now, who's 32, I'm going to offer you as a burnt sacrifice, he'd fight me. I think. Isaac didn't fight. He willingly offered himself. I think that's the lesson. A precursor of what Christ offers himself willingly. And so, our faith is challenged consistently through life, just as his was. But the prayer and hope is our faith continue to grow in all these challenges, as his did. Abraham had to learn patience. It's a very difficult virtue. to learn. I'm still struggling to learn patience, especially when I drive. I'm not the only one, so I'm sure some of you may understand. A child waiting to open his or her parent presence learns patience. Waiting to hear how you did in some activity, you have to learn patience. There are many ways we have to learn patience because we don't have the answers now. They're just not available. Imagine how Abram must have felt when God promised to make him a great nation and he had to wait 25 years for that promised son. Abram ever doubt God? Probably did. Because only after 10 years, the Bible says that Sarai and Abram took matters in their own hands. Chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. The results were man's will, not God's will. And so we have Ishmael. Now we have, as a direct result, his lineage, the Arab nations. Because God promised to make Ishmael a great nation as well. The results were Ishmael, and they put their promise in jeopardy by bringing Ishmael into the world. Isaiah 49, verse 23 ends by talking about not being ashamed for those who wait on God. Sometimes we just need to be patient and wait on God. Consider that patience is a character of love, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4. That patience is to a healthy relationship. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 2. Patience even helps us in helping those who are spiritually weak, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 14. And Abram had to go through disappointment. Have you ever been crushed with disappointment in your life? All of us can probably raise our hands, probably both hands. Consider Abram's disappointment. A great deal of excitement, leaving his family behind. As we mentioned, he travels 400 miles to a land and there's a famine there. Sometimes our expectations are too high and we get disappointed because they're not met. Colossians 2, verse 7, Christians must always be thankful for what God has provided. Ephesians 5, verse 20, be thankful to God for all He does. And in Hebrews 13, verse 5, we should be content with what God has provided. Abraham had to learn submission. God's will, not my will. Submission is never easy, especially when you're never told why you're to submit. Abraham was told to go, submit. He was never told why. Not told, well, he was told to give a promise. Let me clarify that. I know as a father, I tell my children, I think we've all said at one time or another, they say, why do I need to do this? Because I said so. I mean, we hear that time to time at work. Well, because I said so. Rarely are we satisfied with doing what we're told without asking why. What's the purpose of this? Why is it worth my time to do? Explain it to me so that I will do it. God expects His servants to submit even when we don't understand the why. If you think of any biblical commands that we want to ask Him why, circumcision. Even Moses struggled with circumcision in Exodus 4, verse 24 through 26. For time we won't go there. But he struggled with it. His son wasn't circumcised until his wife Zipporah circumcised him at the fear of death to the son. Strange fire. Nadab and Abihu, Leviticus 10, verses 1 through 2. What was wrong with the fire? Well, what's the fire God commanded? Why couldn't he use another fire? God commanded to use this. Or even Uzzah, who lost his life in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, for touching the Ark of the Covenant. Why can't you touch it? It's really just a box of wood covered in inlaid gold. Why not touch it? What's the big deal? God said not to. He did. So God took his life. What about baptism? Why not God get baptized? That doesn't really make any sense. Why? In obedience to God's commands, we don't always have an understanding of the why. Although we can certainly show by scriptural references for baptism there is a why, as we mimic or mirror Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. So we too mirror and mimic Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. As we go into the water, the old self is done away with, it's not like into the water, we rise Isaac get to walk through his life. Almost done. Abram offered Isaac, Genesis chapter 22, and obeyed even when God asked him to do something he did not understand. When the greatest time to start faith is when we don't know what to do. God was silent. You know how many times God spoke to Abram over that 100 years? Anybody want to guess? 8 times. 100 years. God spoke to him 8 times. We could go through it, but for time we won't. That's a long time not to hear. Oftentimes, we struggle with doing what is right when we don't know what God's will is for us. What choice do I make when choice A and B both seem right? It's easy to make a choice when A is wrong, we know clearly by Scripture, and B is right. But what choice do I make when both are aligned with Scripture? Which is God's will for me? God is silent. We have to put our faith and trust. Many times Abraham had to just make it work without even hearing from God. That 8 times only did God reiterate the promise, as we'll talk about next week, turn the promise into a covenant, which we'll talk about next week. Colossians 3, verse 17. I think Abram did what we need to